Okay. Last time that we met, we talked about 5.3K, and we first of all started off on trying to figure out the know and show piece of it. Do y'all remember that struggle that we had with that? Did y'all see the email that I sent you guys from Tracy about what the broken down 5.3 looks like? Can y'all pull that up real quick on your iPads or on your devices, please? And then we will talk about that real quick before we go into the actual student work. You got it? Okay. Come on, you got it. Almost.
Working on it. Having trouble with the internet here. Okay, now I got it.
Lauren, while you're looking over that, if there's anything that we need to look at from the know and show what she gave us versus what we have a little bit of it in the right direction, but hers seem to be more thought out, detailed of the know piece of it.
Do you want to, since we're just on the fraction part, are we just doing the fractions, or do you want to add all of it with the decimal?
Are we doing 5.3K today? Again, for math?
Yes, if we're planning these next upcoming weeks, if we're planning Unit 5, then Unit 5, then it'll be geometry.
It'll be geometry. We need to go ahead and fill this one out then. We need to do the whole, go back and look at the whole know and show, yes, but we just did the division for your DOL, right?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, no, we need,
We just did addition.
addition, okay, okay. All right. Let's go back and look at the know and show then. Well, based on what you guys have for your DOLs, would it be better for us to add to this or recreate with what Tracy gave us in addition to what we have to make sure we have all of what Tracy has added to what, or extend on what we have?
I think if we were a little more, we can be more specific down here with adding her combination of decimal plus a fraction.
Yes.
Okay.
And then if we did decimal plus or minus a fraction down here, and then she added where it says it involves changing one of them to a decimal or a fraction to actually solve the problem.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
think
So we can
that
add on to this piece right
Just
here.
add here.
And then what about on the show side of it? She said standard algorithm, open number lines, pictorial models, and decomposing numbers.
Yeah.
And we have common multiples, interpretation of the word problem,
And we got pictorial models.
using pictorial models. So we need to add then on this side, standard algorithms, open number lines, and decomposing numbers.
Decomposing numbers, yes. Yeah, because in decomposing numbers, I can think of like simplifying and interpreting the decimal with a fraction part of it. We have been using a lot the number lines for, when they're, estimating. And there was an activity that there was like a numeric line where they have to place the fraction, so they have to estimate if they have a whole number or not.
Like
So
the
it's like they have
benchmark
a
fractions.
3/4, so they will have, it's closer to 1, so it means you almost have, so we have been using that.
So do we need to add that they can, show that they know how to estimate?
Yeah,
Is that helpful? for
well,
this one?
we have been, that's one of the lesson plans, basically, we were working, and right now, one of the strategies that we have been using with them, they gotta show they understand that estimation. But I think we should add
So,
it.
reasonableness,
Estimation.
Estimation,
Mhm.
yes.
That sounds good.
reasonable,
Well,
reasonable, I'm just putting.
Any of
reasonable,
the reasonable, yeah.
yes.
and estimation.
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 Okay. And now then, do we need to continue on the no side?
I think we should put add, subtract, decimal, plus or minus a fraction.
Okay.
Do you agree? Because of that question.
Mhm.
That has
But there's, they,
9/10 is a decimal plus
Mm-hmm.
a
So
fraction.
know the relationship between
Between those
decimals
two.
and fractions,
yeah,
Okay, so
just in case they have that, yeah.
yeah, because they gotta understand that, like, it has to be, if they're doing it vertically, the high one, they gotta be subtracted from the bottom part, so.
That's going back up to your common multiples, right?
Mm,
And I
For
think
adding and
that goes
subtracting?
with,
yeah.
you would do all this with these four too.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Does that make us a little bit more
Specific.
specific, or more able to work off of this piece?
Yeah. I didn't really realize that the showpiece was the strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Because I'm almost thinking that common multiples needs to be over here.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, cause like,
Because like you can do the standard algorithm, you can do a number line.
the actions.
These are like what they're, you can fill out a pictorial model. You can't fill out a common multiple. Common multiple is what they have to know
In
to
order
do
to do
these
those
four
things.
things.
Okay.
But maybe in the show part, but I don't, this is what, you gotta see that they have the common multiple there.
So
they're showing you.
Create a list of
Mhm.
multiples.
Mm-hmm.
So to
Because
me,
sometimes
maybe
right now, what I'm seeing with the exit tickets, they having,
Yeah.
some of them having trouble with the
this,
process
these
part
two
of
need
it.
to switch because the factorization is the action.
Mhm.
They are factorizing their multiples.
See, yeah, they gotta look for the common multiple, then choose the least one, and then change it to their common denominator.
I'm gonna put list. Factors and multiples.
Yeah, they need to know what a multiple is, and they need to be able to list them in order
Mhm.
to do the standard algorithm.
Because I noticed that some of them listed out their multiples of 2 to make sure 10 was the least common.
Okay. Where y'all are headed then, put this back up here. And then let's look at your student work. Now then that we have this piece complete, look at your student work and determine what, for your kids that did not show mastery, goodness. Kids that did not show mastery based off of the list that you have compiled right now, put those in their specific categories of where their gap is. And then we'll look at it in a different way. Because the way that y'all have it is, Lauren, I believe yours was, they understood and wrote out the steps
Mhm.
and completed the top piece right there with the vocabulary. And then other ones, they got the word problem, or they got the math problem correct, but they didn't fill out the explanation piece of it. And then some that just didn't know what was going on. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it was mostly, correct answer, but not simplified. So they did
Okay.
everything except simplify.
Okay.
And then I have, the correct answer, but not simplified. And they didn't finish filling out the steps, and then wrong
Okay.
and correct.
And what about yours?
Well, basically, I divided in process. What I mean process is, sometimes they will do the fraction part, but if they forget to add the whole numbers part,
Okay.
or they forgot to simplify, or I don't know why, when they see a whole number there, they see the mixed number, they just freak out because they seen that whole number. So when I was explaining to them yesterday, I literally pulled down an example with a bar graph. It's like, guys, this is just whole pieces. This is just the whole one, and this one just are the pieces of the fraction. So in that part, they just not having adding the whole numbers, or sometimes they add their they didn't transform the fraction with the common denominator. The ones that didn't they grabbed the concept, basically they needed to simplify, and the ones that didn't know their
Okay. So with what you're saying, then put that where their gaps are in common, where they have their common gap. So if it's a simplifying issue, put that into a pile. If
Okay,
it
good.
is not having common denominators, put that into a pile.
Okay.
And so go back and reorganize that way based off of our completed know and show chart, because we didn't have this the last time when we did the DOL of this being complete this way. Does that make sense? And yours are pretty much
Yeah, they're
like
good.
that.
Mm.
This one.
Look, there. So simplify.
Because I'm hearing a lot of simplifying for the both of you. Is that something that we need to add to either side, know or show, of how to simplify?
Probably is.
Yeah. Because simplifying is more about understanding their equivalent fractions.
So show how to make
And then I would say,
equivalent fractions.
divide numerator and
Or multiply.
denominator. Well, to simplify, you have to divide.
Oh
to
yeah,
decrease.
simplify you gotta divide, yes, but
But if you're either dividing or multiplying, it comes down to equivalent fractions. You could say, create equivalent fractions by dividing and
Okay.
multiplying.
I just think it's a little different. Like, I know it's an equivalent fraction,
Mm-hmm.
but they know that 6/10 and 3/5 are equivalent, but they're not understanding that you have to divide until you can't
Get the
divide
smallest
anymore.
parts, yeah.
like, yeah.
Okay.
like-
So how would you explain that?
So they will,
How do they know that they're done? Because there's not really a rule.
Reduce to where you can't divide anymore.
Yeah, so
take it to the simplest form, or
How do,
I guess
how do
it's
you,
understanding how to show them you're done.
how do
I can't
you,
divide?
would that be with listing factors? Going back and making sure that they have addressed every factor that they've listed, of how far they can
So
go
if
back
they're at
and
the
bump and
first
divide?
factor, they're done.
Yes,
Mm,
I'm guessing.
Both numbers are
That that once they get down to the first factor, that if it's 8/16 plus 9/16,
Is eight's a factor or a multiple of 16, so you can divide 8 by 16 and be
Yeah.
done.
so that's still,
Okay, so
So
I'm
it's
gonna,
like number sense.
so,
yeah, I'm gonna add divide to reduce, and then I'm gonna put an arrow to listing the factors and multiples.
Divide to reduce.
Because that then, it's making a connection as to why they're having to list their factors. When they go back and check their answer, there's a use for why they're listing their common multiples.
Mhm.
Does that make sense? Do you see that as just another step for them to do?
Mhm.
Do
And
you?
sometimes I think that, what I'm seeing is sometimes it's just, what will be my next step? What will be my next step? That's what, sometimes they get hold on, because that
We
will
did
be
talk
their
about
last one.
prime, but 5 is the exception, because if you have 5/15ths, you can still divide,
That's true.
or 3/9. 3's prime.
They have to. I mean, they have to have a strong understanding of their multiplication facts.
Yes.
They have to have
Yes.
a very good understanding.
And they had to do a lot of,
And we have
mental
a lot.
division.
I have a lot that wrote that they were going to add and simplify and then didn't. So that makes me wonder if we don't know when to simplify.
But you know what?
Okay.
We didn't
That
add that word here. Maybe that,
add what word?
like, simplify.
Then, but look at your answers. Lauren made a good point. Look at your answers that the kids wrote. That they knew they had to subtract and divide at some point. They just didn't know when, and they don't know if they don't know when to do it. They don't know why they have to do it.
They know simplification's a step, but this group didn't do it.
Is that? Do you see any commonalities within your DOLs that they know the steps? They just don't know. But if they're able to list out the steps, though, they should be able to, if they know how to list it out and know, because they know when to do it, they
Or
just
they're
didn't
just
do
not
it
going
in the
back.
problem.
Maybe they're.
They know that that's what they're supposed
Or
to
they
do.
may not know what it looks like in the word, in the number form, but they know how to write it out in the word form.
Because they skipped that step, because they did go and do that last part and add the whole number.
This person put make the fraction even. I don't know if he means equivalent.
Vocabulary,
Yeah.
can I put that on it?
Okay, well, knowing that one of the gaps is simplifying, and they're not understanding the connection between what they're writing out and then going into the actual working of the number problem, of the number sentence. What pieces do we need to go back and address on the no side when we reteach?
I would say simplification, simplifying,
Okay,
and based on some other interesting things I've seen in here, probably some improper fractions to mixed numbers,
why do you say that?
because they added, some added the fractions together and then left it as, well, no one actually left it as an improper fraction, but they changed it incorrectly.
So they know what an improper fraction looks like.
And they know that it needs to change. But when they went to divide,
Mm-hmm.
the dividing piece, they're not understanding how to use division to make the next number.
Is that in here?
Mm.
Okay, okay, so they get the first part of the steps then.
Yeah, I would say that they are on the right track, that the division is messing them up.
Okay, all right, so then, what would your reteach look like if you went back and retaught this piece right here? And the simplify and reduce? That's for either one of them.
I think maybe having 3 different groups, maybe 4, and just when we rotate through centers, when they reach my table, then this group, we could discuss, okay, here, we stopped at the steps. Did we not know what to do? Did you not know how to write it out?
Okay.
Kind of reteach per group, and then with the correct all the way, maybe have them re-go through their steps, look at what they did, and see if they have any questions. Because some of them did ask me questions, they were unsure, but they ended up getting it all correct.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe just reiterating that they did do it correct.
That could
Like,
be,
touch base.
that could be, what questions do you still have?
Mm-hmm.
Type of,
With that group.
with that group, and
Yeah.
give them a little note card or something, what type of, what,
Yeah. What are you unsure of?
Mhm.
And then I think the simplification group, then they could have a reteach on how to simplify. Maybe we could point out that both of these numbers are even, what numbers can be divided by even numbers.
Okay.
And then with the wrong answer but somewhat correct steps, maybe talk about where they went wrong. Most of them went wrong in the same place with division.
Okay.
So maybe going over the division part again.
Okay, so would, if you're addressing division with the majority of the kids, is that something that needs to be seen more often?
Yes.
And what would that look like?
Well, the thing is, this is just adding. When we get to subtracting, they will have to use them more. So they will be practicing a lot the simplifying part. And I like the grouping thing. I was just even thinking like maybe going into one station, having the same problem, but then in one station they will start the first piece, then the second part of it, like we get the common denominator. Now we get to the changing to that to the common denominator, so they will have and keep going until they get to my group, and then we sit down and what questions do you have? Because sometimes I think it's more about what will be my first step, second step, third step, etc. I'm seeing it here. They write it down, but still they having difficulty remembering what will be my next step in that order. I don't know.
What do you think about that?
Making sure that they understand the steps in the
Mhm.
correct order, is that what you're
Mhm.
saying? What do you think is the main issue there? That they don't understand the steps or they don't understand the order?
Because what I'm seeing with the ones that are not getting it, they're still having trouble with common denominators. And mostly mines, they having trouble with the simplifying part of it. So I think this will be, if I place it in small group, what will be my center.
But going back to her question, are they not understanding the steps? Or are they not understanding the order of which the steps are to be in?
I think that's maybe because they having a lot of trouble with the estimating part. So
Does that cause them to get the problem wrong?
the thing about estimation is that they need that strategy so they will know that the number will be in an approximated. They will
See
have
if
to
it's
be in a
reasonable.
specific number. If they get the estimating part, they understand the whole fraction part of it is
Are they skipping the step or not doing it correctly?
no, then there's a lot of them that are not doing it correctly.
Okay.
They're
So-
not estimating correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So then you could put them in a group and
Mhm.
reteach estimation for those that need that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other ones you said are having a hard time with the common denominator.
That's right. So that's what they have them in a group. So it's just practicing the common denominator part of it. But then what will be their next step? So I don't.
Are the ones that are having a hard time with that getting the estimation part, or is it,
Mhm.
no?
I mean, maybe you could do adding fractions without the whole numbers, and have them, and so they're not just finding a common denominator, and maybe have some kind of sheet that where they skip count. So what are my two denominators, 2 and 10? So I always start with the larger number. So I do the first three multiples, 10, 20, 30. Then I take my 2's, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Oh, they do have 10 in common.
Mhm.
And then they count. I know 2 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is what I'm going to use to transition my denominator to 10.
Mhm.
And have it to where they just get in the habit of, I see 12 and 8, so I'm going to list out my multiples of 8 and 12 and see where they match up.
The thing is, we had one station that we were addressing that, so we need to teach that again. With that.
If you know that this is, that the two areas that we're talking about of the estimation piece, which plays a huge factor in other SEs, is that a station that we need to monitor somehow with an outcome?
Yeah.
Because some stations we can, when we talked about in our CLT the other, before Thanksgiving, about monitoring station outcomes, how could you monitor that to make sure that they are estimating correctly and going back and applying to whatever concept you're working on?
So they can have an exit ticket in that one. Mm.
And I think doing more things like this, where you have them actually write out what they're thinking, because I think a lot of the times if you just give them like a multiple choice problem or something in a center an exit ticket type thing, you're not able to see the process that they're, thinking. So if the problem really is common denominators or estimation, if they're writing out what they're doing, then maybe you can see where the gap is.
You could do that with, if one of the needed steps to get the problem correctly for the justification piece, the reason why ask what their estimation is and why they're having, and somehow figure out at the very end, because in the very end of this one, it was finally I will, and what was the answer to that last piece? Finally I will what?
They put add the whole numbers.
Okay.
Which is, I mean,
right. How do you get estimation back in there to go back and check that they did it correctly?
so kind of the way that we talked about estimating a fraction might be a little different than the way you did. I was having a lot of trouble with them doing the wrong operation, and they were subtracting their whole numbers, and it was really weird, or multiplying them. And so I told them, okay, I know that 2 plus 5 is 7. So my whole number is going to be around 7, and I know that I have a half. So it's going to be larger than 7 and a half.
Is that going to help them with simplifying and reducing fractions and improper fractions to mixed numbers?
For me, no, but I thought we were talking about reasonableness.
Mm-hmm.
Because 7 6/10 is over 7 and a half. I mean, it's a reasonable answer, but it's not simplified. So technically, 7 6/10 is the equivalent fraction.